What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the reveal of number 13 in my power rankings, a deep dive into the Carolina Panthers. Now, this intro is going to be a little shorter just because there's not a whole lot of turnover on this Panthers team. We kind of know what we can expect from this Panthers team, very similar to last year. Yes, some turnover as far as the coordinators go, but the roster and overall scheme should be more or less the same. So just like all the other deep dives, we're going to focus in on every position, give this team positional ranks, how they stack up against the rest of the league, and then we'll look at the schedule and really talk about my expectations for this Panthers team. Talk a little Vegas over-under as well. So we're going to get right into it here, starting with the quarterback, Cam Newton. And for those, maybe the 10 or 15 of you that, if you're still here, have stuck around since one of my very first videos on this channel, really the first big take I had on this channel was that Cam Newton, coming off of the MVP season as sort of the love child, Steph Curry swag monster coming off the MVP season, I said was incredibly overrated, was not an elite quarterback that was really going to show his true colors. And in the 2 years since, people have now come back so far the other way, saying Cam Newton is overrated, that I might even be high on Cam Newton as I rank him 12th in the NFL. Now, my big criticisms of Cam 2 years ago really still hold up. I think his footwork in the pocket is still pretty bad, that he doesn't manipulate the pocket and use that elite mobility to the extent that he really could, and then he still has accuracy issues as his mechanics are really still a little bit flawed. I think you just got to kind of live with that at this point. So I think we know now what Cam Newton is, and that is at the top of his game, an elite quarterback. But the reason he doesn't rank up there with those top 10, 8 quarterbacks is that he has some serious inconsistencies, and when he's bad, he's really off. So coming in here, ranked number 12, you're fine with Cam Newton. They're not looking to replace him. You can definitely win a Super Bowl with Cam Newton as your quarterback. You just need, like we saw a few years ago when they almost got it done, really everything to be in place and everything to kind of go right, or for him to just go on an absolute tear and not show those inconsistencies. So that's my spiel on Cam. We can move on. Really no backups here to talk about. So we're going to move on to the running back here, starting with CJ Anderson, who really is the starting running back here. And I loved that sign. I've always been very high on CJ Anderson. And with Jonathan Stewart leaving here, he's going to fill that role and I think play it at a much higher level. I just think Jonathan Stewart had sort of flamed out here, and CJ Anderson is going to bring this team something they were probably missing in terms of running between the tackles, because Christian McCaffrey, who we'll talk about in a sec, really does not do that very well. Nice thing about CJ Anderson as well is he does offer more of a threat than Jonathan Stewart ever did catching the ball. So he's got to stay healthy, but I've always said CJ Anderson is underrated. I don't know if he's there anymore, but I've always thought of him as a top 10 running back, and the Panthers sneakily picked that up. And then you've got Christian McCaffrey there, who came in as a rookie as arguably the best receiving back in the NFL. I think you could argue Chris Thompson before he got hurt. Those two guys really battling it out for that title. Not going to offer much between the tackles was my big criticism of him coming out of the draft. Some people thought he was Le'Veon Bell. I thought those people were insane. Just doesn't have the power. And when you're a defender going to tackle him and you don't have to worry about getting run over, it just totally changes your approach. And, between the tackles makes it a little easier to get a hold of him when he doesn't have all that space to use his wiggle, which is really where he is elite. So you get him in space, he is a very good playmaker. Was he worth the 8th overall pick? I still don't think so, but still a very good playmaker nonetheless, and you can even factor him into the receiver grade that we'll talk about in a second. You got Cameron Artis-Payne here as well. He was actually kind of poised to become the Jonathan Stewart replacement before they signed CJ Anderson. I don't know if that is indicative of what this team thinks of Artis-Payne. He's a pretty talented young player, just hasn't gotten that opportunity. If anything happened to CJ Anderson, who does have injury problems, I think you would see him come in and offer probably about what this team got from Jonathan Stewart last year. Then you got Elijah Hood and Kenjon Barner there as depth, not really worth talking about in my opinion. So as a whole, they come in 18th at running back, so a pretty solid group there. And then moving on to talk about the receivers here, as Carolina is tied for 22nd. Now, they don't really have that true number one here, and this does factor in tight ends as well. But this is just another one of those receiving cores where, yeah, you don't have that number one, but you got your guys who they know what their role is, and you can really orchestrate a nice scheme with these guys. So you got Funchess as sort of the red zone possession guy. I think his time has kind of run out in terms of seeing the upside of a AJ Green number one receiver that he had some potential to become, but I just don't think at this point in his career he's really going to develop too much more. But he does have pretty nice hands and is athletic at his size. They bring in Torrey Smith as a deep threat, even though he's not really outrunning too many people these days. Did make a really nice catch in the Super Bowl. Maybe he's got a little bit left in the tank here with the rocket arm of Cam Newton as a deep threat. And then the drafting of DJ Moore is really going to be a polarizing aspect of this number 22 ranking because crazy upside. Now, I didn't have DJ Moore as my number one wide receiver, but you talk about pairing just amazing raw physical potential with some playmaking instincts. Get this guy the ball, and he's going to make you pay. You got to see him develop as a good route runner and really diversify his route tree. So if he can really emerge as a number one target, this ranking is going to skyrocket. I don't know how much versatility he's going to bring in his first year. I think he might just be a little bit raw, but you think of the short to intermediate passing game, a young Stephon Diggs, a really good playmaker. I do think he offers some nice things as a rookie and then continues to grow years 2 and 3 into a potential number one receiver in this league. And then you got Curtis Samuel. I called that the worst pick in the draft last year outside of the first round, and that just might be coming true. I just didn't see any skill there from Curtis Samuel, and he has yet to prove any of that in the NFL. And then you got Damiere Byrd. They do sign Jarris Wright to compete in the slot. I don't see him earning a starting job ahead of DJ Moore. And then just a collection of undrafted guys that probably aren't going to be making this team. And then you also talk about Greg Olsen, one of just overall the most sure-handed players in this league. Pairs so well with Cam Newton and his rocket arm, the ability to put that ball on occasion where only his guy can get it. Great pairing with Greg Olsen. Should be healthy, should have enough in the tank for at least one more good season. They do draft Ian Thomas as well, tight end out of Indiana. A guy a lot of people liked. You know, to me, it was a guy who was more athletic than a lot of the tight ends in this class. It was a very poor tight end class, in my opinion. I don't see a whole lot in Ian Thomas, probably a career number 2 tight end, but we'll see. So that really rounds out this group of receivers. Again, just a solid group, nothing crazy, but everyone kind of knows their role. See what Norv Turner, the new coordinator here, can really do with these guys in their specific roles. Coming in at tied for 22nd in the league. And then lastly on the offense here, the offensive line. So they do lose Andrew Norwell. So that is a big loss, but this was quietly a very, very good offensive line last year. They brought in Matt Khalil, and a lot of people gave them flack for how much they paid him. 5 years, $55 million. But a big reason they gave them flack for that was because he couldn't stay healthy in Minnesota. He finishes the year last year, did not play great, don't get me wrong, was below average starter at left tackle, but a lot of teams are in a worse spot at left tackle. And then the left guard is going to be a question. You're going to have Jeremiah Searles, who they brought in, competing with a collection of guys. Dorian Johnson, a guy out of Pitt who I really liked last year, who hasn't been able to stay put. Amini Silatolu. Maybe Taylor Moton gets involved for that left guard spot. So left guard and left tackle are a weakness and are the reason this is not a top 10 offensive line anymore. But center, Ryan Khalil, when healthy, a very good center. Right guard, Trey Turner, one of the best run blocking guards in the league. And then the thing really boosting this up, and before you criticize this ranking, do realize that Darrell Williams was under the radar, one of the biggest breakout players in the entire NFL last year. 4th round pick in 2015, was the 3rd overall rated offensive tackle via PFF last year, including left tackles, and he was the number 1 rated right tackle. Was a big reason Cam Newton was able to stay upright and get this thing going offensively last season. So Darrell Williams poised for another great season there at right tackle. So again, coming in tied for 15th. It's not the best line in the world, but it's going to allow this team to do what they want to do. And then as a whole, this team comes in at 12th offensively. If DJ Moore can emerge as a true number one and maybe Matt Khalil can take a step up or something, maybe they can creep into that top 10 offense. But overall, I think we know what we're going to get from this offense. Going to have a little bit of inconsistency just thanks to Cam Newton and not having that dominant offensive line or a number one threat. But overall, should be a pretty productive offense. Gives them a chance to win any week. So then you flip over to the defensive side of the ball where they come in tied for 13th. Now this front seven is still one of the best in the league, but it is that secondary that we'll get to that is really going to drag this ranking down. And in certain matchups, this defense is going to struggle. But in other matchups, they're going to dominate because of this front seven. So we break the front seven down by run defense, pass rush, and linebacker. We'll start with the run defense where this team ranks number 2. K'Wan Short, all starts with him. Underrated as one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league. Will rush the passer as well, but so dominant up front. They're going to bring in Dontari Poe here, but they lose Star Lotulelei. Lotulelei has not played very well, but honestly, neither has Dontari Poe, so that might be a push. But then you got some really good depth here. Vernon Butler and Kyle Love, really nice depth. Also, factor in Kendrick Norton, a rookie 7th round pick. And then the run defense is, of course, boosted by this linebacking group. We do rank linebackers, but that's more about coverage. As far as run defense, Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis, Shaq Thompson, these guys fly around the field, make it very hard to run the ball. And we'll talk a little bit more about those guys in just a second. But again, number 2 for run defense. And then you talk pass rush. We did mention K'Wan Short. Definitely more known for his run defense, but definitely a top 10 pass rushing interior guy. Poe might be able to drive that pile as well. And then you got Julius Peppers somehow still playing at a pretty high level, and Mario Addison. This team comes in tied for 20th. So it's not a dominant pass rush. It is poor enough to be a concern when paired with the secondary that we'll talk about. But they do have a lot of talent here. It's not the worst. You've also got Wes Horton, Brian Cox, Deshaun Hall, a 3rd round pick last year. Maybe he can take a step up here because they do need a number 1 to kind of emerge here. And then they also took Marquise Haynes in the 4th round this year. So they are trying to address that and boost up this pass rush. Also keep an eye on Carter Schultz, undrafted. Last year was probably the number 1 name coming out of the spring league. Look for him to maybe make this team and make an impact here. So while the pass rush ranks 20th, the linebacking grade, again, focusing on the coverage ability of these linebackers, is number 1 in the NFL. All starts with Luke Kuechly, when healthy, the best linebacker in the NFL. Needs to avoid those concussions. That is starting to get dangerously high for him, but is basically a free safety playing in the body of a middle linebacker when he lines up in the second level of that defense. Is just so instinctive and rangy. And then you got Shaq Thompson, who is literally a college safety lining up at linebacker, offers incredible range, but the physicality to play the run as well. He continues to get better year after year. Look for him to really take a nice step up, as well as Thomas Davis is suspended, I believe, for the first 4 games. So you're going to see even more of Shaq Thompson being asked to do more of the stuff that Thomas Davis does. And they're probably going to start trying to phase out Thomas Davis, as the man is not getting any younger. But when he comes back off suspension, should be fresh. It's just ridiculous what the Panthers have at linebacker here. I mean, really, any one of these 3 would be the best linebacker on probably 15 or 20 teams in this league, and they've got 3 of them. It's definitely the identity of this defense, the flexibility that they allow for this team in coverage and in run defense. And it also is going to help out this secondary that comes in ranked tied for dead last, tied with 4 other teams. Really no one you're too excited about here. James Bradbury is continuing to develop. Definitely the best corner here, a 2nd round pick from a few years ago. So pencil him in as the starter. But again, not really an impact starter. Then you do have Captain Munnerlyn, should line up in the nickel yet again. Definitely one of the better nickel corners in the league, but you're not really factoring your nickel corner into how well you can cover. That's more about your safeties and your outside corners. So then the other outside is going to be Ross Cockrell, who actually had a pretty good year for the Giants last year. Dante Jackson, a super athletic corner out of LSU. They take in the second round. He could end up winning that job. They did take Rashawn Golden in the third round. I've been hearing that he's probably going to be a safety here. And just looking at this depth chart right now, I do need to rewind a second and just mention Andre Smith, a linebacker this team took in the 7th round. Was one of my biggest sleepers in the class. We're going to probably get a chance to see him play as the 3rd linebacker here. I think he's better than David Mayo and Jermaine Carter, who they took in the 5th round, while Thomas Davis is suspended. So keep an eye on Andre Smith, more of a future play there, as well as Thomas Davis is phased out maybe to be the 3rd linebacker. Anyway, let's get back to the safeties and corners. That second corner is probably going to be a pretty big liability here. If Cockrell can play like he did last year and win that job, then you might be okay. But then the safeties is also a pretty big concern. Mike Adams is fine, but he's an aging veteran and really over the last 4 or 5 years hasn't necessarily been an impact player, just kind of has existed. And then the free safety is a huge question mark. Colin Jones, currently listed as the starter on Our Lads. He'll be competing potentially with Rashawn Golden, Denoris Searcy, Demetrius Cox, Demir Bird also listed as a safety on Our Lads. Is he going to try out at safety? Who knows what's going on here? But the range in the 3rd level of that defense at safety is very concerning. And it's not like you've got an elite pass rush here to boost those guys. So the pass defense in the 3rd level is concerning, but you are, like I said, very much helped by those linebackers and their range. So again, overall, tied for 13th. If I was a little more excited about this secondary, they could definitely get into the top 10 for defense just because this front 7 is so dominant. And then you look at the coach and culture here, very steady, really like the coach here, Ron Rivera. So they come in 7th for coach and culture. Definitely is helping out their overall rating there. So now the moment we've been waiting for, taking a look at the schedule here. We know it's a good football team, but they've also got to play in an incredibly difficult division, the NFC South, and conference as a whole in the NFC. So you look at the schedule and it's actually pretty favorable. And I'd heard that the Panthers actually had the hardest schedule in this conference, someone had said. I can't remember where I heard that, but when I look at this, I don't see that at all. I actually see a pretty favorable NFC schedule. So I've got them starting 4-1. That home opener against Dallas is definitely a big one, but they get Cincinnati and the Giants at home, and then going to Washington, who I think they match up pretty well with. Then a tough stretch where you got to go to Philly, Pittsburgh, and Detroit, but a couple winnable home games in between there, and then Seattle, Tampa Bay, and Cleveland. Getting Seattle at home, pretty nice there, so picking up 3 more wins, and then a really tough stretch getting the Saints twice on the back end and Atlanta. So I feel pretty good about this win projection here. You know, a lot of these schedule predictions have come in with a bunch of question marks, but I feel pretty solid about what this Panthers team is. So I've got them right at 10 wins and not a whole lot of plus minus on that. So I've got them going 10-6. Is that going to be enough to get them into the playoffs? We'll see. Again, at the end of this deep dive series, I will do a speed round prediction of my full predictions, including playoffs, Super Bowl picks, all that good stuff. So for now, you're going to have to settle with a 10-win projection for this Panthers team. So Carolina fans, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you're not a Panthers fan, is this too high, too low? What do you think? If you enjoyed the video, do hit that like button. It helps me out more than you know. And cheers as always, guys. We'll see you for the next one.